Well, good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2025, our Environmental Justice Coalition meeting, number 11, January 6th, 3:33. So good to see folks. We'll welcome other EJC members as they make their way into the space. But why don't we kick off the meeting? I'll walk through a little bit of our housekeeping, and then we'll do some introductions and dive into how we're going to spend the day together. If you go to the next slide, just reminding folks the work's funded by the Climate Commitment Act. You've seen this slide at all of our meetings, so we'll thank the good folks of Washington and Department of Commerce for sending out the guidance and funding for this work. If you go next slide, Jen, I don't know if you want to just wait until, we always have a welcome slide, so I don't know if you want to just wait till project updates.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, let's keep going then. So just as a reminder, we have some staff in the room. We have some of our consultant team, myself and Nicole from the Kearns of the West team, Tracy Lunsford from who's been leading the greenhouse gas reduction sub-element work, some of which we'll get some reflection on today as it relates to environmental justice language and equity language and policy drafts. And then, Jen, I don't know if you wanted to introduce, I know we have a staff member from Clark County, Jose. Do you want to introduce, or Jose, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Jose Alvarez with Clark County, and I am the Land Use Program Manager in Community Planning.
Great.
So this is joining us today to listen in. I told him you might want to listen to today's conversation on the revised policies.
Great. Well, thank you. You didn't make the slide, Jose, but you're welcome into the space for sure. So thanks for being here. Let's keep going, and then we'll do some introductions. So I'll just provide some high level vision for our objectives today. So we have a unique opportunity after all of this work that has been done getting to this place to talk about some of the impacts that you all as EJC members have had, and just commend the Clark County team and others who have really contributed to the place we are in the conversation that we're going to have today. And so one is on kind of overarching equity goals and really understanding how all the work and feedback and engagement that you all have done, how that's been incorporated into greenhouse gas reduction and resilience policies. So really kind of the culmination of so much work and effort that's gone into getting us to where we are today. And we'll spend some time, Jenna will kind of outline the approach and some of the ways that your feedback is now showing up in policy, and then we'll give you some space and time for discussion and feedback, but also we'll be cutting our meeting a little bit shorter today to give you some additional space without asking you to do outside work outside of the time that's allocated, give you some additional space to offer additional feedback. Hey, Ben, welcome. So to do that, if we go to our agenda, we'll do introductions here in a second, then we'll get some project updates. We'll spend some time reviewing overarching equity goals before taking a break, and then really looking specifically at some examples from the revisions to the greenhouse gas reduction, emission reduction, and the resilience policies. We will create space for those in the public that would like to offer public comment to the EJC, and then we're going to wrap up and get you out of here by 6 o'clock. Now, just as a reminder, usually these meetings go till 6:30, so we are asking folks, and I'll reiterate this later, asking you all to take that additional half hour and help to do some analysis and review of some of what we'll be providing today. And we'll provide a worksheet for you all to be able to do so. A couple more slides, then we'll do some introductions. So just as a reminder, if you go to the next slide for our technology here, EJC members, you all are joined as panelists, members of the public as attendees. So for those of you joining as public members, we can promote you during the public comment period, but there's no active engagement with EJC. We'll ask that you stay on mute when not speaking. Encourage folks always to be on video, help create the feeling of community. You can always raise your hand to get in the queue. If you are on the phone, I don't see anybody on the phone, but if you end up on the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute. How many times I say that? I never feel confident, so nobody's correcting me. We do have Nicole Matilde here from Kearns and West. You can email her with any technical issues. Ask that you update your name, pronouns if you'd like to share. In Zoom, organizational affiliations always great as well. And then, of course, we're here for a couple hours. We'll build in a break, but take care of yourself in this late afternoon time. So last kind of housekeeping slide, just a reminder, you have a raised hand button in the bottom of your screen. So you can click that at any point to get in the queue. We also do have enabled closed captions. So there's a CC button, show captions on the bottom of the screen if that's helpful for your participation. We don't have reactions, but you have the raise hand button. And just as a reminder, we do have the chat enabled. We'll just ask you if it's in your settings to change your settings to everyone. But as always, try not to use chat as a mechanism for virtual side conversations. So before we, well, I'll do one more housekeeping slide. I keep thinking I'm going to be done. So just last slide, you all have done an incredible job as we've now gone through 11 meetings, so I won't spend much time on this. But for our meeting discussion guidelines, again, just balancing time, honoring the conversation we're hoping to have. Focus really on the substance. We really are asking you, especially as we get to this place in time where there's specific language that's being proposed for policies. So really focusing in on issues, questions, and substance of that language. Always listening and learning from each other, maintaining respect, and as I said earlier, focusing on chat etiquette. So let's do a quick round robin for introductions, and then we'll move into approval of our last meeting summary, and then provide some updates and dive in. Why don't we start in the room? Monica, I see you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Monica Zazweka. I'm Vice President of Vancouver Metro LULAC, Council number 47026. Yes, I do have to say the whole name. I have a lot of notes, and so I do want to be mindful for everyone's time to speak. But I got into this, and I have about 4 full Google Notes pages of notes. That said a maxed out amount of characters in this Google Note one, so you have to create another one. So, and then I wrote everything down. I'm going to send this all to you all, the team, so that you don't have to just, oh no, what did Monica say? So, but I'm here because I am a strong advocate for thriving within the means of our planetary boundaries, and everyone thriving all together and a reciprocal relationship. So I'm very excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation for today. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Jude?
Unmute button. Hi, I'm Jude. I'm with the Farm and Food Justice Network.
Thank you. Josh?
Good afternoon, folks. Josh Jones, Program Director over at Partners in Careers.
Thank you. Alana, it's not Alana. Oh, yep, there you are, Alana.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. Alana Tadella with the Pacific Islander Health Board of Washington.
Thank you. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hi, everybody. Rebecca O'Brien. I'm the Executive Director of the Free Clinic of Southwest Washington.
Thanks, Rebecca. Abby?
Hey everyone, I'm Abby Hollow-Peter. I am the Community Engagement Coordinator at Odyssey World International Education Services.
Thank you. Almendra?
With Fourth Main Forward, and it's a beautiful day today. I hope everyone's having a great day.
Very well. We can see that sunshine, that rare sunshine in your face. Thanks, Almendra. Tabby?
Hi, Tabby Kale with iUrban Teen, Program Manager there, and a part of the EJC.
Thank you. And Min?
Yeah, this is Min Pham. I'm the president of the Vietnamese community of Park County. I'm part of the EJC.
Great, thank you. Did I miss any EJC members? And then we're gonna promote Johanna. Johanna, welcome. We're gonna put you right on the spot as soon as you got in here. So if you could introduce yourself, say hello.
Hello, I'm Hannah with the Pacific Islander Community Association of Washington. Hello.
Great, thank you, welcome. Any EJC members that I missed? Got everybody? Okay. So let's keep going. Thank you, everybody. We'll do a approval of our meeting summary from meeting number 10. So I just ask if there's any edits, changes, or corrections to our meeting 10 summary.
Amazing work getting everything together. I have one little request. If it is associated with the slide or there's a slide that comes in, or if appropriate, if you could just insert that like as a little line so we can reference back.
Okay, thank you, June. So we'll note that for today's purposes, there's a reference. And we'll, Nicole, we'll follow up if there's questions we have for Jude to make sure we're aligned with the ask.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jude. Not seeing anybody else offering any corrections, changes, last call? Okay, we will consider the meeting number 10 summary approved. And with that, I'll pass it to Jenna.
All right, hi everyone. Again, Jenna with Clark County. So I've got a couple of updates. I will start with just talking about your meeting materials. It sounds like some of you have looked at them already, but just to, if you haven't had a chance to dig in, what you'll see in the meeting packet, you'll see comments from your fellow EJC members and public comments that have all been received since the last meeting. And you'll also see one of the key meeting materials today is a copy of the draft policies, including that include revisions based on the last couple meetings conversations, as well as first draft of some overarching equity goals and policies. And then in the background materials provided today, there is a lot of information. So we don't expect you to read through all of it unless you want to, but just so you know what's there, we included one document that is a side-by-side comparison of the draft policies that we reviewed in November and December compared to the version that's shared today, with a brief explanation of what's changed. So if you want that side-by-side comparison, it's there as a resource. We also have another very large table. You will need to zoom in if you open it, because otherwise the fun is you can't read it unless you zoom in. But what that is, it's tracking a lot of feedback. So we put in next to every policy the feedback from EJC members at your last two meetings, and then a column on how that feedback was addressed. And then we also have notes on recommended changes based on review of the public engagement feedback, as well as recommended changes based on review of partner agency team feedback. So again, huge table, lots of information, but we are trying to be very transparent and document what it is that we're doing and why along the way. And then we have a third document that is the details of staff's assessment of all of the public engagement feedback that you all helped us collect over the past year. And so again, sort of big table on sort of our crosswalk of comparing that feedback, key themes from that feedback with the draft policy list to see where there were gaps. So just want you all to know that information is there. After this update, I will deal with the sun that is shining directly behind me, so I apologize that there's a interesting glow going on right now. Okay, so that's in your meeting packet. And then if we can go to the next slide, I also just wanted to revisit the project schedule. So as a reminder, we are at the starred item today where, so this slide, is the high-level overarching view of the decision-making process for this project. We're at the starred item today where, while we spent the last couple meetings using the equity lens to review policies and provide, for you all to provide feedback, today we're starting the process of confirming your recommended changes based on that work and all of your work over the past year. So we're still at that start item. And once you all are done with your recommendations, next it will go to the CAG, and when they finish their work, recommendations will go to the Planning Commission and County Council. So let's go to the next slide. This is our more detailed project timeline. And I know we looked at this one last time and we've done everything on it, but we still want to recognize that that is a lot of work over the past year that happened. And our plan is at our next meeting, our last meeting as a group, we want to debrief the things on this slide a bit more and get your feedback on it. We did a lot of things the county's never done before as part of this project. So want to spend some time next meeting reflecting on that. But let's go to the next slide for now. This is the second half of our timeline on what's left. So our main topic today is the start item, where we want to work with you all on reviewing, refining, and confirming equity lens recommendations related to the policy list. So that's our main focus of today. And then again, at our last meeting in February, we'll talk about all the things that come after this group has done its work. Let's see, and then just a heads up, at the end of the meeting, we do want to check in with you all to see if you are interested in writing a letter as a group that would go to the Planning Commission and County Council to, accompany sort of the proposed recommendation to them. We'll talk a little bit more about it at the end, but something to keep in mind if you are interested in helping with that, we'll be requesting, if there is interest, a subcommittee of a couple people to help with that. And then the full group can review that letter at the last meeting again, if that's of interest. So yeah, I think those are the main things I wanted to highlight on the schedule. And I think that's it for my update.
Great. So a couple things. So just any questions that folks have on kind of where we are in the process? Okay. Anna, welcome. Like to introduce yourself?
Apologies, my computer went on this. Oh my goodness. Hello everyone. My name is Ana Karen Betancourt Macias, she, her, ella, EJC, and I am here representing Latino Leadership Northwest.
Great, thank you. Welcome. So again, any questions on what Jenna just laid out for the timeline where we are? Okay. So Jenna, I think it's right back to you. We're going to kind of move into a multi-part conversation around kind of equity and environmental justice language that's embedded into the policy drafts. And so Jenna, I'm going to hand it off to you. We're going to have kind of two parts, one overarching, and then use some examples from the greenhouse gas emission and resilience policies to really tee up the ask of you all to get some immediate feedback today, to the extent that you have it, but also ask you all to spend some time reviewing some of the broader policy language. But Jenna, it's to you.
Okay, hello again. So for our discussions at the last couple of meetings, staff, we've been working over the past several weeks to make a first attempt at drafting an overarching climate equity policy that's really based on key themes from reviewing all of the that's come up from the EJC as we've talked about draft policies, from the key themes that came through from all the public engagement feedback we helped collect, and from, so those are sort of the key sources, right, of what we've been hearing over the past year, and really focused in on the last couple months on. So, and you also might recall, we've been trying to capture sort of high-level themes along the way over the last year, that we are now at the point where we're trying to embed it into policies. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And so as we started to sit down to try to write something that reflected all these key themes that we've heard, repeatedly, we ended up writing two goals with a couple of policies underneath. And I want to just explain sort of our logic and approach of how we got here, and then we'll look at them and talk in more detail. So the first goal is to facilitate a just transition to net zero greenhouse gas emissions and equitably enhance community and ecological resilience to climate impacts. And as we we're drafting a goal. We thought we might need a second one because we were struggling with this idea that environmental justice, this is the first time the State's Growth Management Act and sort of all of our planning documents here at the county have ever touched, or really approached this concept of environmental justice. But that concept is broader than just climate change, right? Environmental justice is, a much, any environmental impacts, right, relate to it, and environmental issues. So we wrote a second policy that we think might make more sense in another section of the comp plan in our environment chapter. And so the second goal that we wrote is advance environmental justice through the Clark County Comprehensive Growth Management Plan and associated plans, policies, development regulations, and strategies. So this would apply to, the second goal would apply to, all of the county's sort of long-range planning documents, where the first goal is very focused on climate change in particular. So that's how we ended up with two goals. And we've got a couple of policies underneath. So I think maybe I'll pause here to see if there's any questions so far, and then we can walk through the policies.
Yeah, that's great. Monica?
Do you want to get us to give feedback right now on them, or when we're going to go walk through the policies?
Ben, what would you recommend from?
It depends. It depends. So Monica, you already warned us that you got 4 Google pages filled. So I think if you have a really specific kind of substantive comment around something that you're seeing, or if I'd rather probably keep it to questions, but if you had something that's urgent, bring it in.
I'll just for the G1, instead of just net zero, like adding wording net positive for the planet, because everyone's trying to get to net zero, but what about net positive? So that's my shortened version of that. So yeah, that's for that one. And then G2 is number 4 over here. Number 4. So advance environmental justice through the Clark County Comprehensive Growth Management Plan and associated plans, policies, development, regulations, and strategies. And so that's what I have for that one, and notes for that one. And there's notes underneath that I will share with you all so that I can keep it brief in this meeting.
Great, thank you. Gabriella, welcome. You want to just say hello, and then Jude, I see you're off mute, but Gabriella, hello, Happy New Year. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, I'm driving, so my sound might be a little bit off. My name is Gabriela Mendoza Ewing. I'm the Executive Director of Hispanic Disability Support of Southwest Washington, Pasitos Gigantes. And I'll be here for a short while. I'm sorry, I have an appointment at 5, so I will disconnect at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Jude?
I just had a clarifying question about goal 2, and it's in the environment section. Does this imply that each element will have an equity statement, or does this supposed to cover each element?
Yeah, good question. So Jenna, do you want to talk about kind of how what we're calling overarching, kind of how that's kind of approached in the kind of structure of the overall comprehensive plan, and particularly for this chapter?
Yeah, I see just generally the goals and policies in a comprehensive plan apply in all circumstances where they're applicable. So by putting it, so in this case, if we put it in the environmental justice, if goal 2 in the environment chapter, that is applicable to any comprehensive plan amendment, any long-range plan that's associated with the comp plan policy. So it applies to basically any long-range planning work that the county is doing, no matter what the topic, if that makes sense. I think our challenge was that if we just wrote it in the climate, I mean, we could put it in the climate chapter. It wouldn't change the impact, right, of the policy. It just, I think we were trying to find a home for it where it made more sense. That would be more broad. I'm not sure I'm exactly answering your question, Jude. So I can't speak to what is happening in all of the other comp plan chapters at this time, but I can say that goal would apply to all comp plan topics. Does that make sense?
Let's, Monica and then Abby.
Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yep, you're on.
Awesome. Sorry, with the second policy, this is what I wanted to add. Inclusivity, integration, sustainability, measurable goals, collaboration, education and awareness, and evaluation and adaptation.
Thanks, Monica. And I think, you know, that there's going to be some of that language interspersed as we look at some of the more specific policy areas. So, but holding those concepts surely in the draft overarching as well. Abby, jump in.
I just had like a really zoomed out question. Is there like what's the main difference between the climate chapter versus the environment chapter? It's kind of a simple question. I just didn't know if you clarifying that might help understand why each one is in different sections.
Yeah, and I will say chapters are basically an organizational tool, right? So it doesn't have like a whole lot of doesn't have like substantive meaning. It's more to group policies related to a certain topic. And so I think and you'll start to see in the documents we're providing, we're starting to sort of map out where we think various goals and policies will live. And part of it is like, well, what policies already exist somewhere else? You know, we're trying to sort of sort through, but doesn't really have an impact otherwise. I think we did have a discussion sort of internally, like, do we even do a separate climate chapter, or do we just integrate it, you know, across all the other chapters? And one of the reasons we were thinking it would make sense to even have a separate climate chapter is because the county doesn't have like a climate action plan like some other places. And we felt like it would be easier, at least for our brains, right, to like see all your climate policies in one place because we don't have this other plan. So for us, it really is like an organizational decision. So Abby, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. Any other high-level questions? Because I did think once we start getting into some of the other materials, it'll help folks kind of see how these kind of goals are supported by, or how policies underneath these goals bring in additional language. Okay, why don't we keep going, Jenna? Thanks.
So we'll go to the next slide then, and we'll look at the first policy under Goal 1. I apologize, it's very tiny font. I was trying to get the whole policy on one slide, but it's now very hard to read. So I'm going to read the whole thing out loud. You know, this policy was, we were trying to create sort of a set of guidelines that really captured a lot of those themes that kept coming up over and over again in this group's conversations. And so that was what this policy was attempting to do. So I'll read through it to start. Implement climate element policies in alignment with the following guiding principles. Evaluate who is most impacted by the issue or decision, positively or negatively. What the data tells us, consider qualitative and quantitative data, and what ways the recommended action could be modified to enhance positive impacts or reduce negative impacts. Prioritize engagement with community members vulnerable and at risk from climate impacts and the unique characteristics of populations that contribute to risk. Directly limit harm, address past harm where possible, and be effective at reducing greenhouse gas emissions and/or improving resilience. Involve collaboration with community members and community organizations as much as possible, and the funding necessary to support collaboration. Design projects to help community members meet their day-to-day needs and build resilience in the face of climate impacts. Climate action should avoid creating harm to vulnerable populations, such as compounding day-to-day financial burdens or making climate impacts worse. Remove barriers to participation and benefits and make climate projects and programs easily accessible. Barriers to participation include physical and non-physical barriers. Examples include access and safety challenges for people with certain physical health conditions or developmental disabilities, language barriers, financial assistance program requirements, availability of childcare or transportation, and meeting time or location convenience. Provide culturally inclusive outreach and educational information in multiple languages and formats with accurate translation. Design educational opportunities for multiple audiences and ages, and seek opportunities to integrate county efforts with other community initiatives, such as cultural arts, youth, community organization, or school programs, to help create a healthier environment and community. Okay, I think I'll pause there, and Ben, if you want to facilitate any discussion.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple pieces, and you know, I just appreciate kind of the work that's gone into this. So I think there's a couple of high-level questions around really overlaying what you see here with some of the input that you've provided, some of the engagement conversations you've had. Are there any issues or questions or maybe concerns with any of the language? So really just want to open it up for folks, you know, as you look at these kind of guiding principles. Is there anything missing, anything you'd add, any concerns, et cetera? Almendra?
Wanted to add that I really like the remove barriers for participants, especially for moms, some that stay at home, or just working moms in general. I think that all moms, you know, when they're taking care of their family, they really do care about a healthy environment for their family, and probably want to get more involved in just, you know, everything happening, maybe things that they can't control, but still want to be involved and aware of what's going on. So I really like that part. Just want to include that.
Yeah, thanks, Almendra. And I'll add, yeah, if there's things that you're gravitating towards because you really appreciate the language or it really reflects, you know, either your own or community lived experience, that's helpful too. Monica.
So I have some notes here where it's at 1, 2, 3 bullet points down. Climate actions must directly limit harm, address past harm where possible. And what I put down in my notes is keystone species, bringing back keystone species. And so if there's like language that can be put in there for that, because that is a past harm and it's the current harm as well. Also with lawns, we can't eat grass. And so that is also a current harm and past harm. And then the 4 bullet points down, let's see, collaboration with community, oh yeah, climate actions must involve collaboration with community members and community organizations as much as possible. I didn't like the language as much as possible. I just wanted it like, we will collaborate. Saying will or is different than as much, because what we say and what we do shapes what we become. And so adding the strongest possible language makes sense to me. Outreach with, it's in the later language, but like idea hubs, skills market hubs, building social capital hubs, having a phone line, having a website, having a newsletter, reaching out to the colleges, daycares, farms, early Head Start, all businesses, senior living centers. And I wasn't sure if and the food banks, but also I wasn't sure if the jails or juvenile detention centers was something in unincorporated Clark County. But also if it's not, it's something the county does do and is in charge of. And so I just wanted to see if that's something that was possible to reach out to. Also mental health facilities, like Community Service Northwest is an example, or Lifeline, because people want connection. And so trying to reach out to every single possible entity that is out there to come and join our community. Also, and then we go down to, adding, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bullet points down. It says climate actions must remove barriers to participation. And it has the word "and," but I want to change that by providing benefits and be easily accessible. And then also it's adding food to the list. Because if you want people to work, get out there, volunteer, you need to feed them. Some people don't have access to healthy food. Also, my kiddo gets a voucher to go to Goodwill to get $25 of clothing when we need some clothing. And so providing some vouchers to local shops so that people that want to come out and volunteer can have clothes that or boots that are actually going to help them. A lot of people don't have that or access to that. And then down a little bit, it's in the same bullet point, but it's availability of childcare, and I feel that it should be a comma right there, not or transportation. So availability of childcare, comma, transportation. And then going down all the way to the last bullet point, climate actions must help create a healthier environment and community where every being, human, plant, or animal, thrives within the means of our planetary boundaries. And I would like to hear more language with Native tribes being a part of this. And so I believe that was all for that one. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Monica. Amanda, I thought I saw a hand flash up.
Yeah, I guess it was a question, but I kind of answered it for myself. But I was also gonna ask if there's gonna be future collaborations with more community organizations and maybe even like providers as well, to be for like providers to maybe it can be a childcare provider or a medical provider to be aware of these kind of resources, especially if maybe the client or if the family lives in an area that's, you know, polluted, or they're seeing some signs of asthma. If they can, maybe there can be some, like Monica was mentioning, vouchers for, I know that Farmers Market does do some program like that, but again, if maybe the county can support programs like that, you know, helps providers, like Monica was saying, kind of give out those vouchers for, you know, healthy foods, farmers market foods, those kind of things.
Great, thank you. Gabriella?
Yes, thank you. I cannot see the document on the screen because I'm driving. But I don't know if you have mentioned or if there's anywhere in there churches to share this with churches in the community, because they also have a big base that sometimes those people don't have any connection to community-based organizations, but they do go to church. And so that might be another way to reach out to people. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you. So I'll note that it's not specifically named. Maybe Jenna, I'll ask you maybe just a couple of questions. So so I hear Monica adding food, and there were some other kind of edits to language in addition to childcare, having childcare, transportation. I think the questions I'm having is both for the group. So I hear a couple examples around whether it's providers or faith institutions. When you all hear community organizations, and this is not a question with any judgment, when you hear community organizations, do you include faith institutions or providers, or is that additional language that should be spelled out? Like, is that what I'm hearing? Is that it's addition to community organizations that they're not included? So maybe Gabriella, like when you hear community organizations, do you include churches, for example?
Sorry, it's getting hard to unmute. So to me, yes, but if sometimes if people don't see community organizations, they might not think of churches.
Okay, so what I heard is kind of community engagement organizations, faith-based institutions and providers, right? That might be additional language just coming out of that conversation. And then, I think, and then Jenna, I guess the question, Monica mentioned the jail, which I believe is a county facility. Is that included in buildings? Like, has that been part of the conversation around the relationship of the jail falls under this? Like, do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, Ben, if I understand your question, I mean, the jail, the courthouse, like all the county's buildings are, would be part of our, policies that we have in there around doing climate work to improve like operations and stuff like that. And I think I'm not sure if Monica was bringing it up as sort of a community entity to engage with and involve, as well. So I think there's that side as well. And again, I think I interpret, community organizations very broadly, but I think, again, if you all have concerns on but someone else might read it and not think of these things, I think that's what then we can do a little bit. We can fiddle with the wording, right, to try to paint a more clear picture for more people if different things come to mind for different.
Yeah, I think that's the summary I would take away, Jenna, is just ensuring that we have kind of as broad or as much clarity as possible. Monica, is that an old hand or a new hand?
That's a new hand.
Okay, jump in.
Okay, awesome. I also wanted to say Work Source, PIC, temp agencies, DSHS, those also for organizations. But I wanted to add into the grass part where I said before, but by turning grasslands into pollinator-friendly and edible spaces, not only you create a beautiful environment, but you also contribute to biodiversity, sustainability, and the local food system. Food closer to home that reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And there's also grass turds around town. Like if you drive up somewhere, there's a little grass patch surrounded by concrete, but replace that with a mix of native plant plugs and pollinators, and install an educational sign with a bird home on top possibly, of that sign that teaches people about the importance of native plants, and have a QR code which takes people to a website that shows the plants that have been planted there and where to get local native plants. And I have a link to places that are doing that. Also, if we want to get more younger folks out, there's this thing called a laser cube. It's literally, it shines up in the air and it's like a bat signal, imagine what is it called? Batman, and saying, but it's actually saying messages to come, and it's in vibrant colors, and it's come to this event, come to this, and that's appealing to the eye. We need to have different sources of social media and media to get people to come, and it's a one-time purchase. But it's putting out, you can put it on buildings, and it's not going to mess with any buildings because it's just a screen, a picture thing. But it's just something for the younger generation. And so I'm just trying to grab where we can. So that was it for that one. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Monica. And so I think trying to build in, so I'll caution getting too far into implementation, right? So the actual kind of tactics, but what I appreciate what your namings, right, is, let's not lose, right, youth as a demographic that strategies and implementation needs to be able to speak to, right, and to engage effectively. Abby, jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify your past question about community orgs, that being really broad versus naming specific things. I just want to say for my input that I think I also interpret community organizations as very broad, but I do kind of think that just rhetorically more specific examples kind of help combat some assumptions that engagement opportunities or educational opportunities are kind of just box checking. I think that if you can get specific or not too specific, obviously, because we're not talking about implementation, but I think that including faith-based organizations versus community-based organizations kind of helps just kind of seem things are going to be a little bit more substantive versus, I don't know. That's just my thought, that I understand thinking that it can be broad, but I also understand why it's meaningful to be more specific, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I appreciate, right? I mean, I think Jenna, your reflection that, if you think about it broad, but you don't want to miss a very specific constituency or asset within a community, we should name it, right? So faith-based institutions may be one of those that's specifically called out, so you don't lose it. So again, just going back at a higher level, when you look at these again, and we'll be having this kind of theme throughout the conversation today. You all have had a lot of conversations with folks. You've called out some of the things that certainly reflect what you have likely heard or experienced in your conversations. I guess, is there any other comments on kind of these overarching guiding principles, by looking at data, prioritizing engagement, limiting harm, collaboration, building up resilience, not compounding issues, removing barriers, outreach and education? Anything missing? Or any other comments on this before we kind of keep moving through some of the other kind of overarching goals? Well, Jenna, let's keep going. And again, y'all will have time with this stuff too. So, this is kind of the first take is what's your initial kind of reaction. And we are going to create some space for you all to be able to spend some more time with it. So, Jenna, let's keep going.
Okay, so if we can go to the next slide. I'd go back up on, this one really quick. So this policy here, I slightly fiddled with the wording just a little bit, but basically this was a policy that was on the draft policy list that we looked at, I think maybe last month. And I think in just reviewing it, we thought it fit nicely with the goal, so we moved it. But this isn't new language otherwise besides a few tweaks. So this is again around the county evaluating comprehensive plan amendments, plans, so all like long-range planning type documents that it would be our job to evaluate all these projects by these core criteria that are in the legislation, right? Around reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing vehicle miles traveled per person, enhancing resiliency, and benefiting overburdened communities. So that's what this policy is. And then do you want me to just sort of walk through the next few, and then if people have comments, we can go back? Okay.
Yeah, and I think, Jenna, as you do it, just hitting on the high points as you are. That's great.
All right, sounds good. So then let's go to the next slide. So this is going to then switch us over to the second overarching goal, which is around the advancing environmental justice. So the first policy under that goal is to review, evaluate, and update as needed practices, processes, procedures, and structures to advance environmental justice through the comp plan, associated plans, and so forth, all the long-range planning documents. So this type of policy, we drafted this because I think as we were thinking about, some of your suggestions, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we had like a youth advisory council, or why isn't the county like making sure its projects do X or don't do Y? This policy, the idea is, well, let's look at what the county does. Whenever we have a project, what's the standard process we go through, and come up with some recommendations on what would make sense moving forward to better embed environmental justice into like our standard processes. So a lot could come out of this, but it was intended to sort of capture some of those ideas that you all made on like a youth council or like a BIPOC commission, things like that could be a recommendation that can come out of work like this potentially, or something else. So that's this policy. Let's go to this next one. This next policy, this actually was, I think, on our resilience policy list. We've seen it before, but we just thought it fit nicely under this goal, so we moved it. So this is just around generally improving sustainability and environmental justice by engaging with overburdened community members on new county-led planning projects. And then the third policy under this second goal, if you go to the next slide, this is in response to feedback. I think maybe Abby, you had mentioned it at one of the last meetings on, you sort of brought up Superfund sites and like polluting uses, like what are we doing about that? And so we wrote this policy in response to that idea on reviewing the county's development regulations for polluting and hazardous uses and recommending ways to eliminate or minimize potential harm. Because, you know, if we think about what, basically this is where the details of what's allowed where in the county live. So this project, right, could potentially help you evaluate if we need to change something in the county in terms of what types of uses we allow there. All right, so I think that's the rest of the sort of overarching equity policies. So Ben, back to you.
Yeah, so hopefully folks are tracking, right? So there's the goal 1 and goal 2 that we're walking through, and goal 2 has these 3 policies underneath it that speak to kind of different elements of ensuring kind of environmental justice. So Almendra, I see you have your hand up, and then we want to have this kind of continued conversation on, you know, is it reflecting the feedback that y'all have provided? And do you see any kind of red flags, major problems, or what changes would you recommend? Almendra, let's start with you.
Yeah, I really like the idea of creating a committee for recommendations and evaluating. It seems like recommendations, are they coming from 2 different places? Like, are they coming from the committee of, let's say, youth or BIPOC, or kind of like this EJC committee? Will there be 2 different recommendations, kind of like how it's set up now, but more like community members? And if so, these recommendations that are sent to county councils or policymakers, who will keep track that these recommendations like get implemented, in like, maybe it's just still like in an idea, but what will be that flow of making sure that BIPOC community members, when they're giving their time and recommendation, that they're actually, you know, having some say, and that they actually see these changes happening in their community?
There's a couple questions, it sounds like, in there, Almendra. So one is kind of the current process, right? And you know, I think part of what we're trying to ensure today is that what you see on the screen and what we'll ask you to review is reflective of the engagement that you all have done, right? So part of it is, you know, we've invested in this process of engagement with the EJC and your colleagues around this table to say, let's have these conversations, bring in that expertise and inform this work. So I think part 1 is kind of, you know, how did we get to this place? Seems like question 2 is, where does it go from here? And so Jenna made a little bit of like, so once, you know, this group has given a bunch of feedback reflective of what they've heard and what they've learned and what they bring to this table, kind of where does it go from here? And then I think the third part of your question is, well, how do we know that it's going to be done right at the end of the day? And that's not your language, but kind of how do you trust that implementation is going to occur where it actually does have the type of benefits or avoids the type of risks that these policies are trying to set forth? So Jenna, I don't know where you want to go, either, I guess, in any order of operations, to help kind of, so how did we get here? Where does it go from here? And then kind of the implementation kind of future. Does that capture it, Almendra?
Yes, for the most part. Thank you.
Okay, if we miss anything, just ask the question again.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so let's see, I'll try to speak to these, and I'll also invite Jose if he wants to add anything on this. Jose has worked for the county for many years, so is very well versed in county processes and what does or doesn't happen, or has or hasn't happened. Let's see, so the current process, this group, right, what you're recommending, we are also working with our community advisory group, which does have a much broader range of perspectives in it, people from lots of different, not just an EJ perspective, I guess I would say, in that group, where we're trying to get to consensus, right? But we have people in this group, in that group, helping advocate for these recommendations to move them forward. And then the standard process that'll follow both with this project as well as basically any kind of county long-range planning process, is everything goes to the Planning Commission, which is like the formal advisory body that advises the council on things related to the comprehensive plan. They make a recommendation that goes to the county council, and the county council is they're the decision makers, right? They make the decisions. And we can't predict, what decision makers are going to do now or in the future, right? So I think that's just part of any public process, right? Is that the decision makers are the deciders, right? So there's no guarantee of anything that gets proposed on what they'll decide. They can either approve it, they can deny it, or they can modify it. So there's, while you all are helping us with this, do a ton of engagement work, get feedback, inform what is being proposed, it kind of highlights the reason why you might want to submit comment and advocate sort of as the process continues to make sure that you use your role as a member of the public, right, to advocate for what you want, right? So that's just sort of the general way, sort of how these processes tend to work. And then in terms of how do we know it's done right, like let's say this stuff gets adopted and approved, so then county staff get to start working on it. There's a few things. So one is with this climate work, we do have some mandatory reporting requirements to the State Department of Commerce. So every 5 years, we need to be reporting. But they haven't told us exactly how this is going to work. But the law says every 5 years, we're going to need to report on our progress. We're going to need to probably assess where our greenhouse gas emissions are, in relation to where they are now, things like that. So there is a bit of accountability that was written into this law. But I think the other piece is that the county, any city, any municipality here, what your decision makers choose to prioritize, what other sort of competing projects take staff time, the amount of resources available to do work, like all those types of things are going to impact how much gets done, to what degree things happen, how fast things happen. So there's a lot of, it's probably not very comforting for you to hear me say this, right? There's a lot of uncertainty, right? But I think that's sort of, again, like if you're a member of the public sort of following along, right, you can help hold a county or a city accountable, right? And say, hey, you all passed this plan, what are you doing? If you're not seeing progress made. So again, I know that's not necessarily the most, I can't promise something that I can't promise, right? But I can describe generally what the process is. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but hopefully it gets at least a little bit at what we're asking about.
Yeah, Amandra, what did we miss?
No, that's great. I think that clarified a lot of, just that it will be like another committee. So nothing really changes from that. And it's good to hear. I know that there's always a lot of things that are changing really fast. You can't predict a lot of things. And I think it does help to create this kind of committee that gives you more, another angle of these issues. So thank you.
So then, Jude, I saw your comment, I guess it's question around ordinances. Are you looking for like language in there that would name those, or yeah, jump in, Jude.
Well, maybe a clarification in terms of what's included in plans, policies, development, regulations, and strategies. Would that include ordinances? Would it include other commissions? Would it include following the money that goes to extension, for example? I mean, I just don't really know what isn't, would be automatically included in goal 2, or what would need to be added for clarification, or a separate policy possibly. I don't really know.
Yeah, Jenna.
Yeah, so I think something like ordinances, that is the tool that's used to approve code and plans and things like that. So if it relates to long-range planning and it's an ordinance, it would be covered by it. I think where, we were sort of specifying things tied to the comprehensive plan, because it seems like it would be out of scope for us to be writing policies in a comprehensive plan that extend to things beyond what a comprehensive plan does, right? So a comprehensive plan is focused on planning for population growth, right? And land use and transportation use and all things like that. But it doesn't, like, we weren't charged in this project to, you know, modify all county ordinances that are related to other things, right, wouldn't be covered by this policy. So I guess we tried to write it broad to cover all of like the planning, like type pieces that go through the county's legislative process, but doesn't extend beyond what growth management planning covers.
So an example might be, though, to look at other goals and policies and see where some of these issues are addressed or not adequately, and to make more specificity there, because then it's going to be in the climate element. So if it has to do with ag, you know, education, then it will automatically include those agencies that work on that kind of thing. Or if we're talking about you know, things that were covered by the I don't know, around homelessness, then we would look in that part of this work, perhaps. Or public spaces, you might address parks, and so then the Parks Commission might have some liaison with the growth management plan. Would that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's right, Jude. So like these other pieces that intersect, like, right, there's a whole parks chapter. So the Parks Commission, whenever they update their plans, right, the parks plan is tied to the comp plan, for instance. Yeah, and same with like this new ag commission. Presumably, if they're working on anything, right, related to the comp plan, that would, you know, those things would all fall and relate to these policies.
Thank you.
Monica?
Awesome. Can you hear me? Okay, awesome. Real quick, sorry that I had to go backwards a little bit. In G1P1, the very last bullet point, I said where every being, human, plant, or animal thrives within the means of our planetary boundaries. I wanted to add our 9 planetary boundaries. That's what the latest science says of what our planetary boundaries are. And also with the growth, what Jenna just said about what the Growth Management Act does is to growth in the county. According to Jeremy Grantham, I don't know if you all know who that is, a very highly just a smart scientist. I don't know how to say that correctly, but he has sought out researchers saying that actually our sperm count and live births are declining. And so it's through toxicity of our PFAS and toxic chemicals and pesticides. And so I just wanted to say that things are changing. But to go to the number 3, G1P2, in C, it says enhance resiliency to climate change impacts. And I didn't know if the word climate change, kind of people are like, oh, the climate changes all the time. And I've heard it from many different people that don't believe in climate change. And so maybe changing the wording to warming, but I'm not sure if that is a good or a bad thing, but that's what some scientists are doing out there right now, is changing it to warming. Also in D, it says, and reducing disparities. Reducing disparities and eliminating disparities in the context of compounding environmental impacts refer to different approaches and goals in addressing environmental justice and equity. And then I have a breakdown of the differences of what disparities reducing and eliminating are right here. But in summary, it says, in essence, reducing disparities is about lessening the gap in environmental impacts, while eliminating disparities aims for complete equity and justice. Both approaches are important in addressing environmental issues, but they differ in their scope, focus, and ultimate goals. And so that language right there. And then number 4, G2, It's focusing on advancing environmental justice, though adding inclusivity, integration, sustainability, measurable goals, collaboration, education and awareness, evaluation and adaptation. And then by addressing these considerations, and it talks more, it gives more sentences, it gives a sentence behind all those words, but by addressing these considerations, the policy can effectively promote environmental justice while supporting sustainable growth in Clark County. And then number 5, G1P1, the county shall review, evaluate, and update as needed practices, processes, procedures, and structures to advance, and I wanted to add advance and will safeguard the health and well-being of our community and planet. Or just advance or will safeguard, not just advance. And then number 6, the word improve, I thought maybe advance or enhance would be a better word right there. And then when it says improve sustainability and environmental justice by engaging with overburdened and vulnerable community members. And then I also wanted to add language with Native and Indigenous, because Indigenous peoples are distinct cultural and social groups with ancestral ties to the lands and natural resources where they live. They have their own language, cultures, beliefs, and knowledge systems, and often have their own political and economic and social systems. Indigenous peoples are often marginalized politically and socially and are considered one of the most vulnerable groups of peoples in the world. And then the last one, 7, is review county development regulations for polluting and hazardous uses and recommend ways to eliminate and just cross out minimize potential harm. Make this the strongest wording possible. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Gabriella, you had a hand up. Gabriella, did we miss you?
Sorry, it's hard to
I know you're
mute.
driving. I got it.
I was just thinking of what Monica was saying. So about the climate warming and climate change. I think it's the climate warming is more of the issue that people don't want to name it as climate warming because some places are getting colder. So it will be climate change, to the best of my knowledge. Thank you.
That's fair. So if we go back to the discussion questions, I'd love to just hear from folks that we haven't heard from. So I'll just ask, like, if folks either in the affirmative or if you have any issues with what you've seen so far or anything coming up for you. And a reminder, we'll be sending, you'll have some more time to kind of review. So we are looking for, both high level and the kind of specifics that you've heard from some of your colleagues. Anything else on this piece? Okay, so let's go to the next slide. We'll give you some next steps on this section. So we are asking that you get some feedback by the 12th, which is just about a week from today. Not this Sunday, but the next Sunday. This Sunday? What day is it? When's the 12th? This Sunday, right? Yes, not yesterday, but next Sunday. And then really the opportunity, as has been the practice throughout this process, the team will revise language based on feedback. It's going to go to the climate action advisory group, climate advisory group, as a recommendation from you all, right? So this, Amanda, this goes back to some of your earlier question, right? That the feedback and the input you all providing will go to the CAG, but will be framed as a recommendation from this body. And then you'll have a chance at our last meeting in February to kind of then come back and kind of close the loop on this conversation. So that's a series of next steps. Okay. Well, why don't we take a break? Are folks good with 7 minutes? Can we come back at 4:50? Okay, let's take 7 minutes and then we'll come back and we'll look at the greenhouse gas and resilience policies. More overarching, but still some time for feedback. So we'll see you in a few minutes. All right, if we can make our way back. If I can get some indication that you're back. I guess you can't, there's no thumbs up, so maybe thank you, Gabriella, a chat or a raised hand or a smiling face, something that I know you're back in the room. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Tavi. Okay, well, let's move to the next slide. Thank you, folks. So let me I'll provide so we're gonna move into a conversation, and this is, you'll get some examples, right? So we're not gonna walk through every single policy in this part of our agenda. This is again, building off our last several meetings when we've been talking about greenhouse gas emission reduction policies and resilience policies. And the hopes for today, if you go to the next slide, we're going to provide kind of an overview of some revisions to those two policy areas, and really focus on the approach and some examples that give you really some indication of how the project team sought to update these policies through the environmental justice lens. So really, we're going to focus not on kind of getting a bunch of very specific input to in this conversation, but certainly answering some immediate questions. And then similar to the discussion that we asked us to have just a minute ago, do they incorporate the comments and feedback, right? So this is just an initial opportunity to start getting a sense of, based on all the conversations we've had, based on all the feedback you all have received through your engagement, that you all have provided through this process, is it reflected in these policies? And if not, what's missing, what might be mischaracterized or may need some more emphasis? And we heard some examples in our previous conversations. And again, we're going to ask for feedback by Sunday. Having said that, we are going to end the meeting a little earlier tonight. So we are hoping, right, even though my suspicion is some of you might say, okay, I've got an extra 30 minutes, I'm going to go have dinner or do whatever the heck is outside of that. I'm going to ask folks to try to dedicate some time. This is a really important part of this process, to kind of spend some quiet time with yourself, really reflecting back on these questions. Does it reflect what we've heard? Does it reflect input that we've given? Are there things that we could revise to strengthen it? So with all that said, Jen, I'm going to pass it back to you to kind of walk us through that process, provide some of those examples, give an opportunity for folks to really kind of get a feel for where the work is going, and then we'll kind of have a little bit of discussion, move to public comment, and then send you on your way to hopefully spend some time with the materials. So Jenna, to you.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Please go to the next slide. Okay, so I wanted to walk through what our approach to, really do the revisions that we are sharing back with you all today. And I said some of this earlier, but I'll reiterate that we've been working on public engagement summaries that have been created over the course of the past year as we move through each phase of engagement on this project. And so as we wrapped up phases of engagement work, we compiled it, we looked at every comment that, every piece of feedback you all relayed to us, or we heard, we summarized key themes and reports for each phase. And so when we were getting ready to revise policies, we took those reports, we put all of those key takeaways into a table and compared them to the draft policy list to look for gaps and any inconsistencies. We also reviewed all of the feedback from you all at your November and December meetings, and we reviewed the policies using the equity lens and compared that feedback to the draft policy list and thought about, okay, how can we address the feedback that you're providing? We also had feedback from our partner agency team. So these are other staff at the county in various departments, as well as our colleagues in the cities and the utilities and other service providers here in the county. So we got feedback from them, and we also similarly looked at what they said, looked at the draft policy list, and looked for gaps or inconsistencies. And then otherwise, staff also reviewed the draft policies for just clarity, could we rewrite a sentence to be more clear? We also spent a lot of time trying to address redundancy. One of the things that we noticed in the draft policy list was that we had very similar policies on the greenhouse gas and resilience side, particularly related to things like planting trees or improving our transportation system. There was a lot of overlap. So we were trying to, how do we consolidate and not be as repetitive? And then we also did some checking on making sure that the policies on this list are consistent with not only the law we're trying to implement, HB 1181, but some other state laws that may be, making sure that our policies are within the bounds of what's allowed. And so we tried to document our process. We're trying to be very transparent. So all those tables I mentioned in the beginning in your background materials, you can look at those as a reference if you're curious on some of these details on how we got to the proposed revisions that we made. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so after sort of doing that process, we ended up, doing quite a bit of reorganization and moving policies and consolidation. We now have a single list, and it has both the resilience and greenhouse gas reduction goals and policies in a single document. We have modified or added new policies to address gaps, feedback, and issues identified through the steps that I just mentioned. We have merged similar goals and policies together, and we have removed a couple of policies or goals if, again, they either that they were just very confusing or were redundant, and we were able to merge them with others. We also, again, we keep kind of playing with the organization of this list, and so we have grouped them into 7 general categories. One is health and well-being. The second is green jobs. The third is ecological stewardship. The fourth is transportation and land use. The fifth is buildings and energy. The sixth is waste management. And the seventh is county governance. And the current list has 33 goals with 124 policies nested within those goals. And it does, the list does include goals and policies that maybe will be cross-referenced, like maybe they'll live in a different chapter. But I think, at least when we've been reviewing the list, it's been helpful to see everything together so that, we're finding people will bring something up if they don't see it, even though we're like, oh, but it's going to live over here. So we've tried to throw everything together so that the suite of policies, you can see it all as one package. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I need to give an update on a new twist in our project that has emerged over the past couple of months. Want to just highlight that many of the policies on our list that relate to building and energy are a bit up in the air at the moment and may need some more revision over the coming months, depending on some state guidance we are waiting on how Initiative 2066 intersects the law we're trying to implement, HB 1181. So a little bit more background on that. And again, we want to share this because we don't want you to be surprised, be like, hey, why did these policies all change, 6 months from now? And it might be because of guidance we get from the state. So, but basically, Initiative 2066, it was a ballot initiative that was approved in this past November election. And it's related to protecting access to gas in buildings. And so as a county, right, we're required to follow state and federal laws, right? So we are awaiting guidance from the State Department of Commerce on what we're supposed to do, with our building and energy policies as part of this work to make sure that we are being consistent with both laws, right? Because we have we now have 2 laws that have a bit of tension between them. And so we are looking for the state for guidance on how we're supposed to navigate that as a local government. And we're not alone, right? This applies to other counties and cities across the state as well. There are also multiple lawsuits at the moment related to this. So we also know there's just going to be like a lot of uncertainty for a while on what's going on with this, but we know it could impact what's proposed in this project. This really is just, again, a heads up that this is happening. The other thing I will add is in the background materials and either if you look at the side-by-side document or our document that has the comment trackers, we did leave some notes by the building policies that we think maybe could be impacted by this. So we don't want to get ahead of ourselves before we get more guidance, but we have sort of flagged ones that could possibly be impacted. So that is that update. And then we're going to move on and talk about other revisions that we made, but just wanted to keep you all in the loop. Okay, so I was going to talk to you a few examples of how we have, again, this document is about 10 pages long. It's, as much as we tried to shorten the list, it kept getting longer. So I wanted to highlight a few examples of the types of revisions or additions you might see in the policy list as you look through it. In this first example, I've got the goal at the top of the slide where the policy was under, just for context. So we added a new policy, and we did this in a few places where we found, as we were trying to add in equity considerations, we were just like repeating ourselves one after another for like all the policies in a goal. And so when we were finding ourselves in that situation, we just wrote a single policy under that goal that applies, that says, when implementing all of the policies under this goal, make sure you do these things. So that was a way to make sure we were capturing these ideas, but without repeating ourselves too much. So I'll just read through it. And again, this is a brand new policy because it, again, we were key themes that stood out related to this goal that we wanted to make sure were highlighted. So in this goal related to protecting community health and well-being from impacts of climate-exacerbated hazards, the new policy here, says implement policies under this goal in collaboration with community-based organizations to engage with vulnerable community members and help design approaches that meet targeted community member needs, such as linguistically and culturally appropriate information, safe options for undocumented residents, approaches for recent immigrants or refugees, approaches for people who rent housing or do not have housing, people with certain physical or developmental disabilities, ensuring information is available in key languages and through appropriate formats and platforms, etc. Okay, so this is an example of new policy. Again, you'll see it's echoing some of the overarching policy themes, but I think we also heard from you all that there was an interest in bringing those ideas down into the policies themselves so that no one can miss it, right? That's what you all had shared previously, right? So this is one example here. Let me go to let's do one more example and then maybe I'll pause for questions. Next slide. Then here's an example of just a revised policy. So again, under the same goals of protecting community health and well-being from the impact of climate-exacerbated hazards. We revised the policy on assessing and improving the adaptive capacity of people who are most vulnerable to climate change-exacerbated hazards. The only revision in this policy is adding undocumented community members to the list, because that came up in this conversation. So again, this was that was the only edit to that policy. So I think I did have a question before I go to some other examples, and wanted to check with you, Anna, or others who've been strong advocates for naming the undocumented community in these policies. I did just want to check again on, we did also hear at the last meeting, you starting to raise some, some safety concerns and weighing, weighing if you, how much you wanted to name versus not name, and weigh the safety considerations with that. So I think we just wanted to double check, again, with you, Anna, or others, if you do, like these additions of naming the undocumented community, or if you have shifted a little bit in your thinking over the past couple of months. So I wanted to just double check that before we move on.
Thank you. I just, for a moment, I felt like, I was talking so much about including undocumented folks, including. And it felt like it wasn't being added, but I wanted to say like thank you for pretty much naming it, right? Because I think one thing that Monica said is like we have to name it to be able to do it. If we don't name it, it's not gonna get done. So I really do appreciate y'all really taking into consideration all the work that we've been doing, but also all the work that we've been putting on this. So I do appreciate y'all adding undocumented specifically. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you that was something we wanted to confirm, so thank you.
Well,
that
just
looks like maybe,
Gabriella, I saw your chat. Did you want to just name?
Yes, so thank you. Yeah, I love that you added undocumented community. And usually when people read people with disabilities, they figure somebody in a wheelchair, but they don't realize that some disabilities are invisible, like people with developmental disabilities. So if you could add that in there, that would be great. I don't know what you think. Thank you.
Monica?
Can you hear me? I also had the note in here with mental health. You know, people have ADHD, other things like that nature, and so developmental disabilities or mental health, anxiety, bipolar, so things of that nature. So that was all my notes for that one. But are you asking for notes from all of those policies or just that one specifically?
I think at this point, right, I wanted to double check the undocumented, naming that.
Yeah.
And I think otherwise was going to walk through a few more examples and then pause.
Okay.
If that works for everyone? Okay. All right. So why don't I keep going through a couple more examples? Okay. Again, I apologize for how much text is on this slide, but this is to highlight sort of another type of change you might see. So again, we're still under the same goal on protecting the community health and well-being from the impacts of climate exacerbated hazards. So we have this policy on developing resilience hubs, and while most of that text is the same, we did add the whole paragraph at the moment. But basically, this was an example of a policy that we added just a lot of considerations to think about during implementation. So again, we're not trying to figure out how to do it, but this is an example of policy where we just got a lot of feedback from the public, from you all, and so again, maybe this will turn into a bulleted list and be more neatly formatted in its end format, but you'll see just sort of, and I won't read the whole thing, but part of it was just to elaborate a bit on this, the policy. So in this case, it says, under developing resilience hubs, it says resilience hubs can be regularly open locations under emergency centers during an after an extreme weather event or emergency. This policy should be implemented in collaboration with community organizations and prioritize establishing resilience hubs in underserved and overburdened areas. And then the implementation approach should address the distinct needs in urban and rural areas. And it goes on again for just additional considerations. This is also a place, if you sort of get down to the bottom of the paragraph, I think I'll just read the last sentence. Hubs could serve as a place to organize community connections, skill building, reciprocity, and mutual aid type initiatives, in addition to connecting with government supported services. So again, I think we were trying to figure out how to pull in feedback that we heard from this group in particular, things you wanted to highlight that seemed to fit within this policy that we had, but again, wanted to, I guess, provide a little bit more direction for when time for implementation comes, that these ideas are essentially outlined to be thinking about when doing this implementation. Okay, so that's another example. Again, we try not to make all the policies this long, but we do have a few instances where we merged enough ideas that they did get longer. And then I think I have one more example. Let's go to the next slide. And I wanted to also highlight an example. I think we had heard from Jude, you've mentioned it, you know, in these meetings. We also saw it in the public feedback and also from some of our colleagues, particularly with some of the cities, just highlighting an interest in having stronger food system policies in the climate policy list. So this is an example where, while we did modify several of the food and ag policies that we had, we did also add a handful of policies to help address that gap that we were seeing in the feedback. So here's just one example of one of the new policies on this slide. And a lot of these ideas come from the work that Jude and Trish did with the Farm and Food Justice Network and their engagement work. And, you know, but we also had to, you know, be careful in that we can't use the climate chapter to solve all of the county's agriculture and food problems, right? Like, we understand that these issues are bigger than just climate change. So we did also try to draft these policies specifically connected to climate change, right? Things that are going to help improve resilience or reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we tried to connect the dots in the new policies that we added on, you know, why it would be a resilience policy, for instance. So again, this is one example. So all of the food and farm related policies are all under this. Get my numbers right. It's goal, either goals 4 and 5 or goals 5 and 6 on the list. Jude, for when you do your review, you can look there to see the new revised suite of food related policies. Okay, so I think that's it for policy revisions. I have, I think, one other slide on some other changes that we made. So maybe I'll do this really quick, and then Ben, you can. Then I've seen some hands go up and down. So, so we also just wanted to mention that some of the feedback that you all gave us, we were thinking about it, and we're like, no, that may not be a policy change, but we think we could address it in this other way. And so I just wanted to give some examples of that. So again, I think at the last meeting, it had come up on an interest in better addressing polluting and hazardous land uses, especially near overburdened communities. And so while we do have one of our overarching policies starts to get at that in some ways, we were also looking at the land use chapter, and it looks like in the description we have on, you know, heavy industrial land uses, there might be a space to add some language around, you know, not in or near overburdened communities, something like that to help bring, to help sort of connect the dots between this new environmental justice requirement and our land use planning. Also, in one of the previous meetings, there was a suggestion on adding a land acknowledgement into the comprehensive plan. And so, again, thinking about it, it probably, you know, this is a big document, 15 chapters, that probably would make sense towards the beginning of the, you know, not necessarily in the climate chapter, a few chapters in. So that's something we could propose adding towards the beginning of this document. And then something else that's come up is, you know, there's been some questions and discussion on, well, what does that term mean? Or like, well, that term scares me because I don't know what that means, right? Does that include this or that? And so we have a running list, which is on the slide at the moment, of terms that have come up that either we feel like need to be defined or you all have asked questions about, that, again, I think we're not quite sure where the definitions will live. They might go, we have a glossary in our comp plan, so they might end up there, but we also have sort of a whole background section that we'll be writing where we can provide definitions for key terms as well. So I think Monica, for instance, at one of the last meetings, you would ask about renewable natural gas, for instance, right? So state has a definition of what that means, right? That is the type of definition we can add into the document if we're using that in any of the policies. Okay. I think that's it for my examples then, so.
Okay. So Almendra, I thought I saw your hand earlier.
Get clarification if the resiliency hub, would that include funds for the development of a resource hub? Like if let's say somebody wants to, like a church wants to become a resiliency hub, but they need to follow like all, they need to install sprinklers and like all this stuff that involves like housing and housing folks. Because I know that during the winter, during the summer, more in the winter, because in the summer there's places you can cool down, but in the winter it's a little bit more challenging, and that's kind of some of the challenges that we've been seeing as well when we try to support these shelters along the Fourth Plain corridor. So I was just curious if that included funding.
Yes, this is Jenna. So that is something that if that policy gets approved, so first step is get the policy approved, right? So which gives us permission to work on it. So that's the kind of thing that would be something to figure out and implementing. So let's say county council likes that policy and approves it, then staff would get to work on, well, how do we do this, right? And what grants can we go after, you know, like what kind of things can we find money for? Or anyway, so that's an example of, so like potentially, and I would assume it would be hard to develop resilience hubs without money, you know, to do that work. But it's the kind of details that we would need to figure out if the policy gets approved. You know, that would be a next step, is to start figuring out how to do it.
And then is that the type of feedback, Jenna? So like just that question, right, in your response, notwithstanding, is that the type of feedback you'd be looking for, right? Develop and invest in, or develop and provide funding for, or is your guidance really for this type of policy? It's really to develop and then you figure out how you're going to do it, right? So I guess I just want to kind of maybe set some clarity around expectations for folks, because I think you could probably write fund in a lot of policies, right? Ensure resources, directly fund, invest in, whatever the language is. So how do you want folks to think about, I mean, I think you gave a good response to that in terms of like, that needs to be sorted out through implementation. Should they carry that throughout all of this, or is that just feedback you might expect to hear? How do you want to guide folks in terms of when they actually review these?
Yeah, I guess I have two initial thoughts. So one is, think about these policies as like 10,000 foot above the ground policies. These are really big picture policies, right? So even though we are like, we're to do some adjustments of the wording, a lot of those details are not getting spelled out, right? So I think my guidance on providing feedback is, if you're like, you read a policy and you're like, I don't think that's doing what it's supposed to do, or like what I want it to do, right? Or I think that's where I would focus your energy on is the policy getting at, you know, if you want to give wording suggestions, right, it should help the policy get at what it's trying to accomplish better or more clearly, as opposed to do exactly this. I don't know if that's helpful or not. I think it's a fine, then it's hard for me to answer, right? Because there's
that's fair,
certain policies, the wording should be fun. But I also will just caution, we really struggle writing in fund something when we don't know if the county will have the funding. You know, we end up writing things as like seek funding, like go after the money, because we can't guarantee it. So there is a bit of, we as staff need to, our recommendations, you know, based on your feedback, we will try to revise in a way that we think is something the county can actually commit to, right? As opposed to writing something that, like, it sounds great, but we actually can't necessarily deliver on it, right?
Yeah.
So
That's a really fair answer. I just wanted to make sure folks had some shared expectations around, like, so if you're all giving feedback that just says, well, you're gonna have to put $1 million onto each of these, like, that's not something that folks can commit to. So I think you gave them enough guidance for, as you all are reviewing, just don't overemphasize the idea that we're gonna just spend money on this immediately, kind of thing. Monica? Oh, you got muted. Bye, Gabriella.
All right, good to go.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, I just have a question. Are you gonna send this via email after the meeting?
Say that again, Gabriella, before you go.
Yes, I have to go to my appointment. I'm sorry. Are you gonna send the guidelines after the meeting?
Yeah, we'll be sending a worksheet that will be helpful for you to kind of look through. That'll be great. Thanks, Gabriella.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Appreciate you. All right, Monica.
Awesome, thank you. Bye, Gabriella. Number 8, G3, protect community health and well-being from the impacts of climate exacerbated hazards, prioritizing focus on overburdened communities, and ensure that most vulnerable residents do not bear disproportionate health and financial impacts. That is my added wording, financial health and financial impacts. Number 9, policies, 9, G3P1, policies under this goal shall be implemented in collaboration with community-based organizations and indigenous tribes. And then it's added wording. Number 10, it says provide incentives to evaluate and implement habitat reduction and population control for arthropod disease vectors in zoonotic disease reservoirs using integrated pest management methods, and then provide incentives for landlords. I would like to change the word landlords because that is I don't know, for me, landlord is just like, whoa, it's a lot. So like rental management. Lord, to me, just seems like God, and I'm like, no, thank you. So to address, and then right here, to proactively address pest and mold issues in housing, while also offering guidance on effective management of indoor and outdoor pests using non-chemical methods that completely avoid the use of pesticides. Why I worded it that way was because things don't just go and flow away. They go somewhere, they go downstream. So what we do to our Mother Earth, we do to ourselves. And then next page, number 11, it's promote ways to protect the health and well-being of outdoor workers. I would like to add provide equipment / work clothing to that somewhere in that policy. We already did number 13. Number 14, G3P6. I just wanted to highlight that your word used was reciprocity, and so I just put a smiley face there. Like, yeah. Also, after that, reciprocity and mutual aid types initiatives, in addition, connecting with government-supported resources. Also, how to get involved with community organizations and job connections with that as well as the resources to gather from there. Because if you don't participate in your local politics, you are governed by your inferiors. Anyway, so and then on 15, G4. It says consult the Cowlitz tribe. I would like the wording consult to be changed to take counsel from. And then down to 19. Let me see. I put promote. The word promote. Either change it to elevate, upgrade, advance, nurture, support, assist. And so all those words could be a possibility. Expand, enhance. Oh, wait, sorry, that's the next one. Number 20 is, let's see, I'll go, okay. Number 20, G5P1, it says expand local food security and food-related economy to address climate impacts and increase. I would like that to be changed to either expand or enhance. And then access to healthy, affordable foods that can be sustainably produced under protected future climate conditions. And with eliminating use of harmful pesticides, I would like it to be ban the use of harmful pesticides. And then number 20, I go to my notes, 20 G5P, that's P1 again. So ban all seriously toxic industrial chemicals and toxic plastics, and we have to find substitutes that are acceptable. We have to use bio-derived materials. We have to engineer microbes and bacteria to take it out of the air, possibly. And then toxicity is local. We need one world, one health. What we do to our Mother Earth, we do to ourselves. I repeat that because it's true. Those pesticides are designed to kill insects, plants, and fungus. What do you think they're doing to us? And so then the next one, 20 G5P2, is, this is where how farmers reshaped region and solved the drought. And so I gave a step-by-step process of the Chala system. And so that will be more that I send to you all. And so also number 22, P4, plan for resilient local agriculture. I looked up agriculture and permaculture, and those are two different things. Permaculture is a holistic design philosophy that aims to create sustainable systems, while agriculture is a more general term that can refer to a variety of farming practices. And there's more a deep dive in my notes of all that. And so the main difference between permaculture and agriculture, there's two different things. And so I just want the wording maybe to be added, not maybe added to that. And then number 23, it's a plan for a distributed model of local food sales and distribution, such as farmers markets, farm stands, food hubs, food banks, and neighborhood food pantries that can be easily accessed throughout the county if there are climate disruptions to food delivery systems. Also adding food kitchens, so you can go there and cook with your community, get to learn how to use food that you don't know how to use, and then food on rooftops with restaurants so that it's easily to get to. And then number 24 is encourage. The word in the beginning, either change it to develop, form, or support. And then it says public and private food producing gardens and urban agriculture and permaculture, at homes, apartments, and community spaces to improve reliability of food access during emergencies or severe weather. And I put empty car lots are also places to do that. So that's all I got for right there. Oh wait, I think we're still going. 25, and pursue would be changing to implement. 26, G5P8, where it says cross-reference all relevant. I'm like, what is relevant? I'm like, I didn't understand that relevant. But then, so I just circled that word, existing rule and natural resource element. And then I don't know if that's a typo with policies. It's POLICYIES. And so I just wanted to highlight that. And then the next one, it says limiting. And I'm like, what is limiting? And so that was a question that I wanted to get more answers on. And then it says with limiting public services, what facilities? The next one, maintaining public roads and capital improvement plans to accommodate the transport of agriculture commodities. And so with commodities, I always get caught up with that word because I just feel like food is a human right, and so is housing. So it's like reciprocal relationships to add maybe there. And then it says, next one, cooperative resource management among agricultural landowners, environmental groups, state and federal resource agencies, and federally recognized Native American tribes. Why can't it just be Native tribes? Why does it have to be federally recognized? And then it says, encourage, next a couple ones down, encourage the management of agricultural lands. I wanted to add permaculture there. And I think that's health and well-being. All that.
Ooh, take a breath. Love it.
Right?
Yes.
Gosh, there's other people that want to speak too, so yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks for naming. I mean, I think there's, you're giving an example of the type of depth that I think we would ask for as well for other folks, is really kind of working through the policies and identifying areas of edits, changes, concerns, feedback, et cetera. So thank you for that. And then Jude, I see your question around the PDF. Jenna or team, do you want to give some guidance on, we are going to send a worksheet, but if you're working off a PDF, Jenna, do you want to?
Yeah, we are going to send a spreadsheet out after the meeting, which is, again, it makes organization of your comments easier for us in that format, but we will accept any format as long as we can read the comments in it. So we ask if you do it in a PDF, make sure we can at least open and see the whole comment, because sometimes text can get cut off kind of thing. So we will take any legible format by the due date.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Thanks for that question, Jude. So I'll leave it open. So I know, love to, if there's folks who haven't offered anything, obviously we're going to ask you to go. Again, as I said earlier, we're going to cut the meeting a little short from our usual timeline and ask you to just spend some time with the policies, but did want to create some space for folks if there's anything coming up now, or if there's questions, or if you're curious about the best way to work through these, or whatever's coming up for you. Any other comments or questions around the policies or questions around the process? Not hearing any. Last chance for today. Okay. Well, I appreciate folks hanging in there. Let's move to our public comment period. So this is a chance if there's folks in the audience who would like to offer public input for the Environmental Justice Coalition. We'll ask that folks raise their hand in the audience. And then if you're providing public comment, we'd ask that you just say your name. You'd have up to 3 minutes to provide input. Focus on substance, be respectful, focus on the topic. I know we have a number of people, a couple folks in the audience. So this is opening up public comment.
And we have one person in the room.
And you have one in the room. Great, thank you. Well, let's go to the room. I'm not seeing any hands, so I'll do a last call for folks online here in a minute. But for the individual or individuals in the room, and then it looks like Meridian Green has a hand raised. So let's start in the room and then we'll come online.
Hi, I'm Dave Rowe. I live in Battleground. This committee is to make policy to help global warming. But any policies you develop will not overcome the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. That impact in 2035, when if it is built, will be warm up Clark County. More cars and more trucks will just continue to warm up the county. I'm proposing that we have an alternative to Interstate Bridge Replacement, which is a highway project. It's costing $7 billion. That they should improve the 3 rail corridors built 100 years ago in Clark County. Those railroad tracks could move more than 25% of the 143,000 people that cross the Columbia River each day. So I wish, I know you're making policy, but we need to have public outcry that this interstate bridge replacement project will not help with the global warming. Thank you.
Thank you. Was it Dave?
This is Dave Rowe.
Great, thanks, Dave. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Let's go online. I thought I saw a raised hand. Meridian, can we promote?
Hi, Meridian Green here. I just so appreciate everybody's contribution. I'm so impressed with the work that's been done, and I am grateful to be able to catch up as we move into this next phase with a new county council, and to implement so many of the really great suggestions. I especially appreciate Monica's feedback and the depth that she brings to this conversation. And I appreciate everybody's work on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Meridian. Appreciate those comments. So again, for those who are joining Either virtually, there's nobody else in person, I assume?
Correct, no one else.
Okay, so I'll do a last call for public comment. Again, if you're joining as a public member, you can raise your hand to be promoted. Last call for public comment. And just as a reminder, if you can see the slides, you're also always welcome to provide written input to comp.plan@clark.wa.gov. Or comment online, and there's a link on the slide, clark.wa.gov/community-planning/comp-plan-comments. And also posted in the chat. Okay, great, thank you. So public comment is closed, so let's move to wrap up and next steps. So I've said this a few times, but I'll tee it up again. So as you leave tonight, asking that you take some time, and again, we really wanted to honor the space and commitment that you all have made into the 3:30 to 6:30 timeline. So we're hoping that this extra 45 minutes or so will give you a head start to be able to provide an overview or a review of the overarching equity goals and policies. We are asking that feedback is submitted by Sunday, January 12th. As always, if there's announcements or anything else you'd like to share for the broader Environmental Justice Coalition group, you can send those to Jenna and she will distribute out. And then we had a couple logistics questions, if you want to go to the next slide, for our final meeting. So February will be the last meeting of this coalition. And so we wanted to at least get a initial sense of whether folks, we'll use that space to wrap up, debrief, and really celebrate, the work that y'all have done and the great work that, staff and project team, consultants, et cetera, have done to get us to this place. We do have a question around whether folks would be interested and willing to meet in person. So that's kind of an initial question. So I'd love to just, if you want to throw in the chat or, give me a hands up if you would be interested in meeting in person, we can certainly follow up. Monica, I know you want to meet in person because you're already in person, so we know that. Anna, yes, please. So I guess if folks could indicate some level of interest and then we can follow up. The next meeting would be Monday, February 3rd. And that would be at the Clark County office, which is, I haven't been out there.
Yes, this is Jenna. Yeah, so we are in downtown Vancouver. We'll send out addresses, information. We are near several bus lines, and so lots of transportation options to get here. So we'll share that information with you all. We also will provide food as this meeting does, run into dinner time. Anyway, we'll communicate details by email in advance of that meeting. Does look like some folks though may have some challenge with like kid pickups and things like that to actually get in person. So we will.
Yeah, and to your point, it'll be hybrid. Yes, but it's whether we want to invest in getting folks in person. So, and Rebecca, I see your comment. Monica?
And I'm willing to pick anybody up if they want to come in person. If that's a barrier for some people. Oh, my dad's calling me in the computer. Also, if you could provide to people that haven't been here before, they take the elevator up to level 5 and then follow the signs that go all the way to the very, very last door on the right of the hall. So that would be.
Yeah, we'll make sure folks don't get lost, and that's very kind, Monica, of you to offer. So I see a couple folks that would be enthusiastic yeses, some folks that would prefer hybrid. So why don't we follow up? Just wanted to get a temperature check, and then if others that haven't chimed in, if you want to just put something in the chat, that'd be awesome. And then the other question, and Jenna, maybe I'll ask you to kind of talk a little bit more, but the planning commission and county council who ultimately receive all of these kind of policy and goal recommendations, we are looking for folks that would be willing to volunteer to create a letter on behalf of the Environmental Justice Coalition. That would be an additional ask before our meeting in February. So it is an additional ask, but then it would be really on behalf of this group, and then we bring it to you in February. But Jenna, do you have any more contacts or anything else you'd want to add?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, a few points I wanted to make. One, I mean, there's no obligation to do this, but I think some of the reasons why we wanted to offer it as an option for this group to do is and you all could reflect, you know, whatever you want to highlight for the planning commission and council, whether it's process, things that stood out to you from the experience, things you want to highlight in your recommendations, you know, whatever it may be, you all could choose what to put in this letter. I would be on point to support you and could coordinate with the subcommittee if there is interest. And we could have some meetings, but also could email back and forth as a smaller group. And I can, again, you all can either provide guidance to me and I draft on your behalf and then you review and edit, or if one of you wants to write, you know, take the lead on the writing. And anyway, very flexible an approach to get the letter written. But the idea would be, right, on behalf of the EJC, the whole EJC would need to approve what's getting written, which is why we need to come back to the group in February for review and refinement to see if the group approves having it sent. That letter then would become, we've included as part of the package of materials that goes to the Planning Commission and County Council. So it would be a letter from you all in, you know, directly from you, as opposed to, you know, when I go up to present the chapter, it's a little bit different, right? Just staff saying something on your behalf versus you saying it directly yourself, right? So I think we wanted to offer that. And then one other piece I would add is this climate work is like part of this much bigger project that is very slow going. So you all are going to finish in February, and the county council may not be voting on this until maybe December, if we're lucky, of next year, which is like right before the deadline. So there's going to be a really long gap between when you finish your work and when this is getting voted on. So our thought was maybe write something while it's still fresh, you know, because in several months, if you, let's say you wanted to go testify or something like that, it might be a helpful tool, right, and resource, because it's hard to remember, you know, things that happened a year prior sometimes. So anyway, that's just some ideas on why we wanted to bring this up as an option. And then I guess I'll pass it back to you to gauge group interest and see if there's anyone interested in helping do this.
Well, we have Anna saying, I would love to lead the effort. So for those of you who might have been hanging back because you didn't want to lead it, you have a courageous volunteer who's willing to lead the effort. So if there are other folks, Monica, is that a hand to help? Or is
Yes, to be the leader is vice president.
Okay. All right, well, let's start with Anna and Monica. If there's others, just let us know. But why don't we start by coordinating with you? It can't be the whole group, just with public meetings and all that kind of stuff. But if we have a couple folks, which we do, why don't we start there? And if there's others who are interested, why don't you reach out to the team and let us know. But otherwise, they'll be in y'all's good hands, and it'll come back to the group. And again, this is an opportunity, as Jenna said, to really speak for yourselves, core principle of environmental justice. I appreciate this, you putting that opportunity up. Any other questions, thoughts, volunteers? Oh, sorry, Jenna.
And I have one thing while people are thinking, if anyone else wants to volunteer. I did want to add that if you still have time left on the contract where you invoice us for your time spent at these meetings, if you still have time left to bill, time spent on this subcommittee, and any time spent reviewing policies after this meeting before next Sunday, you all can bill us for that time under that contract. We know some of you have used up all your time, so we aren't able to give you more, but if you do have time left, make sure you bill us for time spent on these types of items.
Awesome. Get paid, people. All right. Anything else on that piece? Okay, well, let's, next meeting, information. So we will be reconvening on February 3rd. Sounds like likely we will get to critical mass for a justify hybrid meeting. It would be wonderful to meet and see and be in company with folks. So we've now been around a room together for this amount of time, which would be really wonderful. As always, the website is there for your reference and resource. Any questions? Hopefully by now you very easily know how to connect with Jenna. Jude, thank you. You're not over the quorum, so we got a team of 3. That's likely a perfect starting point for letter draft. And with that, we're going to give you about 45 minutes back from our initial 3:30 to 6:30 schedule. Please go in, spend some time, give some feedback. Your input's super important. And with that, I believe we're ready to close out. Anything you wanted to add, Jenna? You're good? Okay.
We're good.
All right. Much love, everybody. Happy 2025. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Wait, quick clarifying question.
Be magical. Oh, wait, what? Question? Oh,
Yes,
I
I was.
I did.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask, excuse me, I was just sick. I keep losing my voice. Should we expect like a worksheet to submit in terms of feedback, or I'm sorry, I think I missed this. Oh, cool.
Oh.
Just got it in the chat, I
There's
think. Oh, I don't know.
I
So
think we
yes.
sent it out, but can we resend to everybody?
It has not been sent out.
Oh, it didn't get sent out. So we're sending it as soon as possible right now.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.